So actually, the government they're even more worried about changing the CPF system more than we hate it. With every change, their electorate will get very upset, right?
Politically expensive.
Right. Even this special account being removed, in that few seconds when that chat group that I was in became ballistic, there were already people saying like, the next election, we are not going to vote for the PAP, and all that, right?
Welcome to the Alternative Budget Debate. I'm your host, Reggie, aka your Chief Financial Coconut, and I am joined with an astute panel. I think this is the most serious one. The past few is, we have a different personality. This one is all very professional. So yeah, maybe you want to start. Introduce yourself for audience that don't know you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris and I'm the CEO of Providend. We are a fee-only wealth advisory firm and we advise people on their personal wealth matters.
I'm Shamsiah. I'm the currently CEO of Pergas Investment Holdings. We do financial advisory for the Muslims on Sharia compliant products.
Awesome. And
Hi, I'm another Christopher Gee. I'm the Deputy Director and Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies, where my research focuses on the economic life cycle. And when we think about it, what exactly does the economic life cycle mean? It's focusing on the investments that we make in ourselves over our life course. And it's looking at things like housing, healthcare, retirement adequacy, which is, I think, the subject of our conversation today.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks for expanding for the layman. At first, when I was like, economic life cycle, whoa, what's this? What's this? Yeah. So we will have a good discussion because I think retirement is a growing concern for a lot of people, right? Whether is it the changing aspirations of retirement for the younger generation, or whether is it things are getting expensive, or a general sense of anxiety for a myriad of reasons, right? Things are what it is, right? And I think recently there's been some changes to the CPF structure, CPF system, right? And the internet went crazy, right? About this CPF shielding thing. So by the time this go out, it'll be a bit late already. But what do you have to say for CPF shielding?
By the time this goes out, maybe the emotions have all settled.
Yeah,
People
maybe
are
more
less
settled.
unhappy.
Relax.
Right, I guess people are unhappy because the special account has been taken away from them. Or rather, when they turn 55 years old, the special account will be taken away from them. And in the past, what happens is that just before you turn 55 years old, you can actually prevent your special account money from being taken and put into your retirement account by investing it out just before you turn 55. And then after your 55th birthday, you can sell the investments and put it back into your special account. And you get a good 4% plus liquidity. I mean, that's very good because it is very difficult to find instruments out there that can give you guaranteed capital, guaranteed interest rate, and you can take out anytime you want, right? So I think a lot of people have been doing that over the past years. They shield their special account. But I guess the government realized that this is a loophole. And so they decided that once a person turns 55 years old, the money gets transferred to the RA and then they will close the special account. And whatever monies they are left in the special account, it will be transferred to the OA. So now they cannot get 4%. They can only get 2.5%, which is 1.5% lesser. So of course, people went ballistic. They are unhappy about it. But I think that it is the right move. Because the people who are really affected are the people that are affluent, right? Because it is only the people who are high income earner that will see so much of their money in SA that can be shielded. But the primary purpose of CPF is not to provide a high interest liquidity account to the affluent, right? I mean, the purpose of CPF is to ensure that Singaporeans, especially the lower to middle household, they can have their basic retirement met, right? So that's the objective of the CPF schemes. And I think by doing that, I think CPF board is just going back to their primary objective of taking care of the basic retirement of Singaporeans.
Okay, fair. I hear you. It's like a system change over time type of situation, right? But just to kind of push that a little bit, right? But what's so bad about then more Singaporeans, although they're wealthy, they put money in CPF and then they just kind of let CPF, essentially buy the government securities, right? And then government securities and continue to invest as a collective. What's so problematic about it?
It's not there's anything bad. Of course, it's good. I mean, if it's available, then you use it. But I guess, and I'm not from the government, so I cannot speak for them. It's really about them going back to their original purpose, right? Of making sure that Singaporeans out there, especially those with lesser resources, they can be taken care of. And from an investment standpoint, to get 4% guaranteed in terms of return, and you will never lose your capital, and yet you have full liquidity, it's actually not sustainable, right? I mean, I do investment I manage funds for my clients, and it will be very difficult for me today if I have a fund that my clients can take out anytime, and I still have to give them 4% guaranteed, and they cannot lose their capital. So I think it's just not sustainable. I do not know how GIC can do it. But I guess at some point it has to stop.
Fair. Anything to add on this, Chris?
Yeah, I think it's underpinned by this idea of fairness, right?
So it's not about operational possibility, because on that front, he's saying that if there's a lot of expense that keeps going out, capital outflow, because the 4% you can just draw down, that's not the primary concern. I mean, what you're saying is that it's about fairness, it's about the moral ground. Is that kind of where it is?
Of doing so. And there's also another aspect of protection of that retirement account money, right? These funds in the special account are there for your retirement. You set up a retirement account for that person's retirement, 10 years, 17 years, whenever, right? But sometime in the future. If you have that in a liquid bucket, right? You can take it anytime you want. You're exposing that person to the vagaries of the market. You're exposing that person to the vagaries of their own personal financial decision making, which may not always be the best, right? And it could be that person who is relatively well off, because they are well off enough to be able to do this kind of shielding in the first place, is then exposed to some setbacks that mean that they don't have as much as they would have wanted to have when they actually do retire at the end of the day. So I think this also has the effect of saving us from ourselves, right? Our lesser motivations. Why are you doing this shielding in the first place? Why are you doing that? And it is somewhat, I would suggest, and I think Christopher Tan will agree, is that it kind of went against the motivation of the whole system in the first place, which is to provide that retirement adequacy for Singaporeans, right? Of all levels, for these more better resourced persons, Singaporeans, well, provide enough to cater for whatever they've saved up to that point, right? Up to 55.
Okay, I think just to add on already
Yes, please,
on
please,
this, as a rejoinder,
Yeah.
I agree that the retirement account is for you to retire and you have enough money at the end of the day. But again, that special account and the returns and the guarantee that you provide, it is something that I think the government can maybe think about a product where it will benefit Singaporean, which may not be in CPF, but for example, in Malaysia, you have this Amanah Saham that they have created many funds. Amanah Saham 1, Amanah Saham 2, Amanah Saham Bumi Putra, where it is I don't say a guaranteed return, but the return is very high. They're giving like 6%, 7%. It's guaranteed capital, and the option is for their Malaysians. So maybe a Singapore, kind of funds that cater for Singaporean, and to encourage them to save actually. And there are many out there who are financially not savvy. And they rely on the government sometimes. It's a very safe, way of kind of savings for them to put in. I know there's Singapore bonds and so on, but it's giving very small return. But I'm not sure that all Singaporeans are aware of such system.
Yeah, fair.
So maybe there's a outlet out there for them to actually put in their money instead of in special account.
Yeah, no, as in, I think there's a valid point in saying that, okay, so if the government wants to set up a system, right, to support us for our retirement, why not you just take the whole thing? You know what I mean? Like, why not you just take the whole thing and you just give me that 5-6%, and I will jolly well,
They can, which is found in the RA, because 4% is what they term as long-term interest rate, right? And to deliver 4%, 5%, it's not that it's impossible. It's just that you cannot allow liquidity, right? Because if you allow liquidity, it's actually very difficult to deliver that 4 to 5% plus. The difference between special account and the rest of the investment is that it's not mark to market. I mean, you don't experience
You don't have market risk.
you don't experience the volatility.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So it's actually very difficult to create a product that allows someone that you want to withdraw anytime that you want and still get 4 to 5% guaranteed. But if you're able to stay long term, then yes, that is the retirement account. Yeah, and 10 years ago, I was part of the CPF advisory panel. We did discuss a potential product that the government can actually do for everyone. It's long forgotten.
Long forgotten.
Yeah, because long forgotten as in...
And better in all sorts of other priorities.
I'm sure the government remembers it. But I say long forgotten because we have not been talking about it. It's called LRIS, which stands for Lifetime Retirement Income Scheme. LRIS. And the idea then was that, look, today people can have an option to use the CPF investment scheme to invest. But most of the time, they invest in very expensive actively managed fund. Why don't the government be the aggregator, right? And then they appoint a fund manager like a Vanguard or a BlackRock or a low-cost index fund provider, and then have that contract with this fund manager and say, okay, look, I'm going to pass you this amount of money. You're going to invest it at this fee. But it is still investing into the securities market. It's still investing into the equities market. And CPF members must then take the mark-to-market volatility risk, right? But not everybody understands that. And I can understand there is a political risk because just imagine the government set up this LRIS 10 years ago or maybe 5 years ago. And then we go through the 2022 market downturn, 21%. Can you imagine now another chat group be very upset and say, what are you doing with my money?
Why you lose money?
Right?
I'm going to retire in 3 years.
Yeah, so it's very tough.
Even not your money, they make noise because Temasek get a hit.
Even today, if it's not their money, you're absolutely right? People are already complaining. 1 year of bad return, people are already complaining, right? I guess the difficulty today, if I'm the one pushing for LRIS, the difficulty for me would be, how do I educate CPF members so that they know that they should ignore the short-term volatility and stay invested for the long term. These instruments are fine. They are globally diversified, low cost. They should be fine. How do I do that? How do I do that for the man in the street? Right? So I think that's the tough part. I cannot imagine CPF board becoming a licensed entity advising people. I don't think any government will want to take that risk to do that. So although we recommended that 10 years ago in the CPF advisory panel, until today it's not out yet because it's a real challenge.
Since we're at the topic, right, can you just do very quick, elaboration on like mark to market, right? Like for so that people understand, like, okay. your CPF money, what's the risk factors involved?
You mean what is the meaning of mark to market?
Yeah.
So I mean, mark to market simply means that, okay, mark to market, right? Your prices have to mark to the daily volatility, right? So for example, buying properties, real physical properties, there's no mark to market because you don't see property prices fluctuating every second, every minute, right? So generally, people feel that buying properties can be quite safe because they don't feel the volatility. They think that buying equity is a lot riskier because every day you see the prices go up and down. So that's what mark to market risk is all about.
So CPF money at this point in time does not subject to those things.
I mean, because for CPF, where is the CPF money invested in? It's simply invested into the special Singapore government securities, right? So actually, that's it. That's it, right?
Yeah, but people don't understand.
So today, when we put our money in CPF, we don't experience the volatility. We are just interested in the 4%.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, with the special account going to be closed next year, people have to then decide what to do with the special account money that is going to be transferred to the OA. If you're not happy with 2.5%, then they have to decide what to do with it. Okay.
So what are viable options at this point in time? Maybe from your professional views, like, with this money sitting around, this extra money, like what will you do?
I think the starting point is not about, okay, now it's in my OA and I'm getting 1.5% less. let's go out there and look for the next product that can give me something better than 4. Try and get back to 4. I don't think that's the starting point. And I'm quite sure over the next few weeks, there'll be many salespeople that will...
No, I already see the ads already. The ads already coming. Right?
Yeah, it's
on
like,
Instagram.
I've got a better option for you.
Yeah.
I don't think that's the starting point. I think the starting point first is to ask yourself, there been a special account today. What was your intent of the money in the special account in the first place, right? And there are generally 3 ways people use their money in the special account after 55. One, the first is that they use it, they straight away need to draw down. Quite unlikely, but let's say they straight away need to draw down. Before even this recording, I give some numbers, right? So let's assume that a person has 200,000 in the special account, and this person needs to draw down day one after 55 years old, $3,000 per month, adjusted for 3% inflation. I've done a quick calculation and it works out that this 200,000 will last about 5.7 years. Now this 200,000 is moved to OA, getting 2.5%. Same drawdown, adjusted for 3% inflation. Instead of 5.7 years, the money will be completely expended in 5.5.
No, this is just a few months.
0.2 years. It's just like less than 3 months, right? So it's not really going to affect. But if you think that you want it to last really for 5.7 years, I don't know why, then you spend a bit lesser. Right? Or you have other resources, then it doesn't affect you. Right? So that's the first way people use their money in the special account. The second way is, well, they don't use the money, they keep it as reserves, they keep it for emergency, they're not going to touch it. If you're not going to touch it, it means you have got a slightly longer time horizon. Well, you can say you've got 200,000, you can keep 100,000 still in the ordinary account, just to get 2.5, but you got full liquidity. The other 100,000, you can take a bit more risk. Say you put in a 60% equity, 40% bonds portfolio, you probably get about 4 to 5%, but you need to have a time horizon of at least about 8 years for it to ride out all the volatilities. And then the third use of the money in the special account might be that actually you don't need the money now, you only need it 10 years later. But you got a 10 years time horizon, then you can decide then now that the money is in the OA, you can take it out and invest it. So it depends on what was the original use of this money. Then you decide what to do. But having said all this, we have been so far discussing about rational decisions. What is the best financial decisions? But the best financial decision is not always the one that gives you the highest return. The best financial decision is the one that gives you that peace of mind that you can sleep. Right. So after we discuss all this, and yes, maybe you can invest in something that give you more than 2.5% or 4% or whatever, but you're not going to be able to sleep in peace because in the past you're getting 4% without any nightmares.
No risk.
Then
government tahan this thing.
Then
after 55, you want to have a simpler life. Right?
Yeah. So maybe it would be that I can't change the rule now, right? So maybe is that I accept it and I say that, okay, I'm just getting 1.5% lesser. I just spend a little bit lesser. I just want to worry about what's going to happen to the world. So yes, I've given like financial options, but at the end, you got to test it with, are you comfortable with investing the money away?
Fair. What about for the Malay Muslim community? Any special requirements on this?
For us, like I mentioned before this, that we as Muslims, we have the religious requirement, which is we have to invest in a Sharia compliant manner. Currently, the fatwa, which is the religious decree that the Islamic Religious Council in Singapore, the Mufti, I think you know the religious head of the Muslim, has mentioned that it is allowed, it is a Sharia compliant to actually to place your money in CPF. So CPF got no religious issue. So by taking out this special account, then that's why I said there is this gap that now I don't have additional option that I can have more. But then again, like you mentioned rightly, at 55, it will not create many differences. You might as well just put in the ordinary account, or you might want to take out and invest in a Sharia compliant manner. But usually in Singapore, it is very limited. The option of a Sharia compliant investment is very limited. It's very limited. If you compare to our neighboring country like Malaysia, they have a lot of options. Because at 55, you have to manage the risk. You want to have something like, at least protected in that sense. So like fixed income, at most you have the Maybank, Sukuk, which is Sharia compliant. Again, the pricing is volatile. Now bonds are not so, So it's a additional requirement by the Muslim to ensure that it is Sharia compliant, and good enough that CPF is Sharia compliant according to the fatwa, because of
Awesome.
the government, intention of having the fund for retirement and for the particular purpose lah.
Also, the alternative is that they can also top up their retirement account.
Yeah, correct.
So we don't make
Yeah.
it sound like this is the end, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
No.
to be
Yeah.
fair, the CPF life is a thing,
Except
right?
that they have to be prepared to lose liquidity.
Yeah.
You can't take out any time, and even the retirement account interest rate is. I don't know whether people remember this, but the retirement account interest rate is not guaranteed, right? I mean, since 2008, it's been pegged to the 10-year Singapore government the average yield of the 10-year Singapore government securities plus 1%.
It's not guaranteed.
And every year, when they make this change in 2008, they guaranteed at least 4%, but reviewed regularly. And that's why every year you hear CPF board announcing and say, okay, it's still going to be guaranteed, right? So even though they top up their RA, firstly, they have to understand that they will lose liquidity. Plus, they may not always get 4, 5, 6% because they may review and not guarantee that 4% base anymore.
Okay, interesting. But there's a new update on the policy, right? Essentially, CPF Life is not new, but ERS has been increased, right? So maybe any thoughts on those things?
So it's not surprising that we've seen this happen at the same time. So at the same time as the CPF SA will disappear for those aged 55 and above, the enhanced retirement sum has now gone up will go up from 3 times the basic retirement sum to 4 times. And you could argue that, in fact, there is no reason for the government to necessarily cap it forever at 4 times the BRS. And just as the BRS will be going up, it could be that the multiple for the enhanced retirement sum also goes up to ensure the coverage that the CPF system provides for Singaporeans at higher levels of savings, CPF savings, that coverage is extended to them. The protection, the risk-adjusted returns that you get from CPF, right, are then extended to more Singaporeans. The desire for the CPF system to be progressive, such that the benefit accrues more to the less well-off, is there, but there is merit, I would suggest, in the CPF system being larger to encompass all of us. This risk pool, and you can imagine this to be one of the largest investment risk pools in the world. And the more we Singaporeans, few of us as they are, within a global context, can put all our monies in the same investment risk pool, the better. It will help. Whatever a rich person puts in will help the poorer amongst us, right? Because that pool is capable of being invested in more things, much more diversification, which reduces your portfolio risk. It also extends the duration of the potential investments, which again enhance your return. You are allowed, therefore, to go into more illiquid investments because you are investing as a big pool, right? And the context of Singapore's demographics, very important here. We are a rapidly aging population. And when you have a rapidly aging population, the liquidity needs of the older persons in that society will rise and will rise more quickly. So at the same time, if you're an investment manager of a scheme where your clients, your investors are demanding more and more liquidity, again, I think Chris Tan alluded to it earlier, right? This idea that your risk-adjusted returns can no longer sustain at those high levels as you had in the past when you were investing for the long term. Any professional investment manager would then have to move into more liquid investments, which bring you down the return curve. That is a reason why that lifetime retirement income scheme has not taken off, because I would suggest that operationally, very few commercial providers of fund management services would dare to take on that contract, right? They would not be able to deliver in the same way that the CPF system delivers for us Singaporeans.
Nice. Okay, so in other words, you believe, because at this point in time, CPF Life is the only pure play annuity program, right? In the market, and you believe that, you know, for the foreseeable future, it will still be the only one because of the structure that it is.
Yep, I actually wrote a paper in 2015, which essentially sets that out. The CPF scheme offers today the best risk-adjusted return in the market, right? Bar none.
I know you try to make a case for not capping the ERS, right? In what you just said, but then why is there a current cap in the ERS?
That was put in place, again, to give the impression of progressivity, right? Such that the system is geared and targeted to cater to the needs of the bottom 2 quintiles. That's basically 40th percentile. Anything above that, the expectation was that you should be wealthy enough, you should have enough resources to go and do it yourself, right? But because of the size of the Singapore market, the fact that a lot of Singaporeans' wealth is tied up in their home, which is not a bad thing, right? But it does create bias towards real estate, right? And not enough for Singaporeans, especially in that middle group of financial investments, financial assets, from which they could use then to invest, right? And the market, the private market, is not therefore developed enough to cater for that. Yeah. So we don't have those products in this context in Singapore. Right. Added to which, of course, Shamsiah, you talked about the Muslim community, which wouldn't ordinarily be able to invest in the traditional type of investments that would be haram, right? Non-Sharia compliant.
Yeah. The question that you asked intrigued me. Why does the government actually cap at that 400 over 1,000? Why doesn't it just, as much as possible? So is there actually, I'm not sure whether in the panel you have some answer, maybe Chris, there is a form of subsidy that the government is giving, one. Or of course, I think the second reason is maybe to encourage the other market, the investors,
private
market to actually,
market.
participation in the market. If not, the government will, monopolize all the investment, because people see that, okay, I can max my, because, you can get the maximum amount. And that is not also the policy of the CPF to, to cater for the very rich, the ultra rich, maybe to put everything in, because there's no cap. They put 1 million, 2 million in their ERS and get like a trust account then.
Actually, there's a lot of cap.
20,000.
Yeah, a lot of caps, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you're like the CPF whisperer now.
Yeah, I'm not. So I'm going to give an answer that is definitely not from CPF. But there are a lot of caps, right? There is a salary cap. In the past was 6,000. It's going to be raised to 8,000 by 2026, right? This year, I think is 7,008, if I'm not wrong. So that's one cap. And then they cap you if you want to top up your special account to the full retirement sum. And then there is 37,740 cap for your contribution. Your total work contribution from employee cannot exceed 37,740. And then there is a ERS cap. Last time 3 times of basic retirement sum, and now 4 times. So firstly, I want to dispel this myth that the government is trying to lock up your money and they want to lock up as much as possible. Because if they want to lock up as much as possible, there shouldn't be all this cap. Right? They should just take as much as you want to put in, right? And use it and I don't know, make an income for themselves. So that's the first myth. But why is there a cap? And this is my opinion. It's not from CPF. I'm thinking of myself as a fund manager. Today, if I have a product that can give 4%, and for RA is 4, 5, 6%, right? First 30,000, 6%. Second 30,000, 5%, the remaining 4%. There is guaranteed capital. it's quite scary. And
I
there is
must test my system first.
no, and there is also a cost in doing that, because regardless of how the market perform, they have to pay this interest.
Yeah.
Regardless of how GIC perform. Every year CPF board is going to go to the government and say, look guys, your special Singapore government securities promised me this percent, right? And where's the government going to find the money from if the market is not doing well? And right, so I don't know, maybe
So
here's the answer.
they're hedging their risk lah, in that sense.
So if I'm a fund manager, so I'm not GIC, but if I'm fund manager, I'll be quite scared to keep on taking money, right?
And guaranteeing that, that kind of
Yes, and guaranteeing that
return.
kind of return, right? So, I mean, that's just my thought.
That's why my friends in GIC are very stressed. But yeah, please. Any thoughts there?
It is precisely that reason. I think if we think about it from the risk pooling perspective, we come back to this idea. I would suggest that there is merit in us continuing to update what we think is a fair level for us to, go up to enjoy the coverage that we get from this national risk pooling system, right? We do this and we invest in all together, rich and less well off. We all do this together. The idea of a subsidy, we subsidize each other when we contribute to CPF. We lock up our money. Again, this idea of locking up our money for our retirement. We're doing it all together through the CPF system. So I think cherish, value the CPF system as it should be. We should be able to put in more, right, if we want to. Chris Tan said just now that the retirement account return is not a guaranteed one. So if in fact in future, the pressure on returns is that so much that it starts to drop and that 4% is unsustainable, then it can be revised lower. But it's revised lower for everybody that's put into the system. It's still would be seen as fair. Of course, there is still that high pressure on the fund manager, in this case GIC, and the other managers of the sovereign wealth funds to perform. But shouldn't they, as public servants, doing this for all of us, have that responsibility? I would say that is an honor. It is a responsibility. But because we do it all for each other, we should have that understanding.
I can tell a lot of people here are very pro CPF, which is not a bad thing, right? But I want to play the other side, right? Just to kind of throw some of the questions that people commonly will say, right? And then just kind of get your response on what do you think of these things, right? Essentially, CPF has evolved over time, right? And yeah, so the system changes, right? With like this recent change and RA being updated, previously, and CPF Live being introduced, so a lot of the changes happen over time, right? And to some people, when they're talking about planning with CPF money, they be like, this one cannot trust one, right? Every 10 years got some change, keep changing, so it's like you sign up for something, you want to know that it's going to be like that in 30 years time. But the track record of CPF is it has been changing, right? So any thoughts on that?
So I think what would be helpful for listeners, for all of us really, is to have the right advice, to get an understanding that systems are not static forever. And whilst, again, I think you alluded to us being mostly fans of and pro the CPF system.
CPF, if you're listening, I also quite pro you. Relax.
Again, depends on the age group, maybe, because you are almost like
So
the younger generation will
is not there.
Generation will not be a fan. I think so.
But Chris, please continue.
The idea is that this is a system that needs to evolve with the times, and therefore, from time to time, there will need to be some adjustments. If the underlying principles of the system are there, then I think one should be prepared for it. There is a logic for this recent change of removing the CPF special account for those aged 55 and above. That logic is well stated in the MOF statement that came out on Friday night. And if you can understand the logic behind that, as you should, then things like the shielding sort of concerns, right, or about those that have shielded and now figuring out what the heck to do, those aren't and should not be seen as sort of really affecting the long-term decision making. Because if you understand CPF as that retirement account, then one should be prepared to not have that liquidity and say, well, okay, I'm going to park it, I'm going to lock it up and end up enjoying the benefit of that security, peace of mind when I actually do retire and I need the money.
If we look at the major changes of CPF over the years, I mean, CPF started since July of 1955. Over the last few decades, what are some of the big changes that people remember and are unhappy about? I remember when my late father was 55 years old, he could take out every single cent from CPF when he was 55. Then the government introduced the minimum sum scheme. And the reason for introducing the minimum sum scheme is to make sure that people don't squander away the CPF at 55 years old, and then they can start to draw down from age 62 for about 20 years until about 82 years old, so that during that period of time, at least they have an income stream to take care of them. And then, of course, we push the drawdown age to start from 65 instead of 62. And people got upset with it, right? Because now you're pushing the goalpost, right? But of course, the reason is because of longer life expectancy. So therefore, we got to delay the withdrawal. And then we introduce CPF Life at the same time. But the way CPF Life, I always have to say that the life is an acronym. It's lifelong income for the elderly. It is introduced so that if you live beyond even 85 or 90 years old, you got an annuity payout. So these are the major changes. And I guess before we get angry about the changes, we got to look at the reasons for the change. And the truth is, even if you plan for yourself, today you do financial planning for yourself with any advisors out there, things change. The markets change. The world change. Impossible to say, don't change, just keep things as they are, because the world will change. And the one last thing I'll say is that when I spent 2 years with the CPF advisory panel as a volunteer, I'm not from the government. We introduced quite a bit of things during our discussion. But I realized that the government is actually quite careful with change. It's not that whatever we introduce, they take it wholesale, In fact, a lot of our suggestions that we suggested, the government have to think twice before they even agree with it. So actually, the government they're even more worried about changing the CPF system more than we hate it. Why? Because they know that with every change, their electorate will get very upset, right?
Politically expensive.
Right. And even this special account being removed, in that few seconds when that chat group that I was in became ballistic, there were already people saying like, the next election, we are not going to vote for the PAP, and all that, right? So it's not as if the government, they don't know that, right? Yeah. So I would say that, and I'm not saying this for the government, I'm saying this for myself when I was in the panel, we are quite careful with the change that we recommend. We only do it when we think it's really important and relevant for the population. The government won't change it anyhow because they know it can be a very costly mistake.
It's politically expensive.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I agree with a lot of the angst come from when they change, you can't withdraw your money. The public out there always think that this is my money. Why is the government holding it back? And they are holding it longer and longer and longer. Of course, the government is always seen like the big, daddy and mommy kind of, trying to settle the public's, our citizens' life. This is my money. I know what to do with my money.
Yeah.
Why are you holding it back?
Yeah. That's a narrative. A lot of people think like that.
And then you increase the retirement account. No, last time was only 100 and how many thousand, and then it becomes 180 now 200,000. You have to put aside. I can't even manage my daily life. The money which is I'm financially I am not able to cover a lot of my expenses, and now you are putting so much in my retirement that I have to leave now. You're
Yeah.
talking about extended lifespan, but I think if I don't have money by 60, I die already.
No, but this is a narrative that is on the ground, right? People think like that.
Of course, as parents also, we that's why the government is looking at the whole citizens, and they look at the lifespan, which is right, because I've seen some of the people who get actually 55, they get last time they get their money.
Yeah.
They go to Batam, finish all the money. Go to Batam and then
some people buy a car with it.
Or they buy a car and then people don't know how to manage, and then it becomes the government problem sometimes because they don't have any savings.
When I was with the CPF advisory panel, we have to do many focus group discussions.
This is included.
I know. So
Batam struggle.
No. So I was with one of these focus group discussion, and I was this gentleman who came to me and he said, "You are from the government." I said, "No, I'm not from the government. I'm a volunteer." And he said, "No, you are from the government." I said, "I'm not." I said, "No, you are." They said, "Okay, I am." I said, "Okay, forget it. What is it that you want to tell me?"
You say?
So he said this. He said, "You go and tell your friends that if they are afraid that I will squander my money away, let me start." He spoke to me in Hokkien, by the way. "Let me sign a contract with the government. If I squander my money away, I will not go to the government and ask for help, and they don't need to help me. I will sleep on the street. They will not need to house me." So that's what he said to me. And of course, I realized there is no point trying to explain because he wasn't interested to listen, and all he wanted to do was to slam me. But the truth is that it's not so simple. If today you really squander the money and you really don't deserve to be helped, do you think that as a society we will let you sleep on the street? We wouldn't. It's not because we love you. It is because we have to keep you off the street, because there are a lot of homeless people on the street, which some countries we have been and we have seen it. Yeah. People come, they don't feel safe, right? And it's an ugly sight. For the branding of Singapore, is not very good. It just doesn't do very well for our country, right, as a whole. So we have to house you. And when we house you, who pays for it? The taxpayer pay for it, right? We all pay for it, right? And is it fair that for people whom are very responsible with their money, they pay for someone who is not responsible and squander away the money? It's not fair, right? So it's not as simple as, no, you don't have to take care of me. If I squander away the money, you don't have to take care of money. And we can't sign individual contract with people, right? Because it's a policy. I cannot look at Christopher G and say, I think you're not going to ever go Batam and squander the money away.
So you're fine. You can
right? So you're fine. You can take the money, right? You look like the kind. That will squander the money away. Right? So it can't be, unfortunately, it can't be like that.
Okay.
But that's a real story, by the way.
I'm sure. Yeah. Chris, you had a reaction just now. Not because we love you, that's what you said. Then you'll be like...
It's how we treat each other, how we expect each other to be treated. Those that have gone through good times, and those, in this case, anticipating a situation that didn't work out as he thought it might, him having squandered the amounts or just lost it, even not for any of his
genuine
reasons. We end up with Singaporeans like that. Do we want to treat fellow Singaporeans like that?
True.
And that is our social compact, right? What do we want for each other, right? Now and in our old age. And if we don't want to, then we cannot engineer something that could lead to some of us being in that kind of situation.
Maybe let's just move the discussion a little bit to talk about then what is a good retirement in Singapore, right? Because we spend a lot of time to talk about like this structure that is out there, CPF as an anchor of how Singapore, the government of the day, plans for retirement for everyone on some level. Then what is considered a good retirement? Like what does it mean to retire in Singapore and have a good life?
I think it's different for different people. What is a good life or retirement for them? But for me, I like to define it this way. It's not my definition. It's taken from a book called Repacking Your Bags. But I like the definition, so I'm going to borrow it. And it is that I can live in a place where I belong, with the people I love, doing the right work on purpose. So for me, in my retirement, if I can live in a place where I belong, and I hope that's Singapore, I don't want to live in a country where I was born and I feel less and less belonging with the people I love, because at the end of the day, it would be friends and family members. I mean, you can go to a nice country with beautiful sights and all that. But if your friends and families are not there, if your community is not there, then I wouldn't consider that to be a good retirement life. I hope to be doing meaningful work. May not be for income, but is work that is meaningful, intellectually engaging, contributing to the society, but on a very purposeful manner. So if I can do that, I would say that that would be a good life and that would be a good retirement life for me.
So are the Singapore systems getting better at helping you achieve this, or is it getting worse?
It's a very dangerous answer to give. I mean, for me personally, in the past, I'm a very loyal Singaporean. I served NS until 2 years ago for 31 years. I love my country a lot. And in the past, I would say I will never leave Singapore. Yeah, but as I get older, I find that it's getting harder to stay here. And it's just personal. I find it's getting very crowded for me. Yeah, so, and along the way, of course, you lose friends. And so, and my parents are gone now. I have a small family. So the place where it belongs is starting to change for me. Yeah, but for me, I hope not. I hope to still remain in Singapore because, like I say, it is the country that I love. I love enough to serve national service for more than 3 decades. I think longer than most people. Yeah, so I hope that this will be the place that I can stay.
Okay, I think I share the same sentiment with Chris.
Well,
in the
also
sense,
friendly.
in the sense that because
you're all loyal Singaporeans.
No, you're talking
Sponsored
about
by NDP.
you're talking about financial here, right?
Yeah,
We don't want to define retirement as just financial, but inflation and everything is getting expensive. It's very practical, right? We want to have a certain basic necessity when we retire. So when we want to age gracefully. So health concern, I think Singapore is trying to do that to make it a more healthy lifestyle in that sense. Like there's more parks. I love to jog at the beach. I stayed near Pasir Ris, so I love it because I have this morning rituals that I can do and seeing the sunset even at my doorstep. So it's like a very privilege. I don't have to go to Thailand or what, but it's right at my doorstep and I can do this. And I really like that they are looking at having more parks, having more elderly, But inflation and crowdedness, trying to achieve this materialistic achievement has like, when you get older, these are not things that you want to, crave for. You want a simple life. You want something that, okay, at least, I have a roof under my head. I can still go to Yakun Kaya, take the toast,
very expensive, Yakun. Control your price. Too fast,
so,
too much.
If the coffee is too expensive, then, you cannot retire gracefully and nicely. So, I think it's very simple requirement by even like for us Muslims, we are a minority, so as long as we have a place of worship, we have the mosque, we can do the religious thing that we required. And of course, like I mentioned, the financial, we would want it to be expanded. People are asking also. And there is very, very little Sharia compliant product here. Very, very little. Like last time, there used to be McDonald's halal. I remember. That time I was in Victoria JC. So McDonald's go halal. Everybody, all the Muslim are go already. Because now we can eat fast food. As long as these things are available, then
true.
Like you say, it belongs. It belongs to the place.
But Pasir is really getting very dense.
Yes,
the last 10 years, there are a lot of new blocks in the area.
Yes, there's too many condominium. And housing is another very big problem for the young generation, for my kids also.
That is another season of podcast. A lot of things to talk about. Yes.
So you're talking about retirement. We are fortunate. We are at this age. We passed that, that
we are the privilege to buy our first HDB flat. Not at a very expensive
we are fortunate. We are the baby boomers. So it's a different stage of life.
Okay,
so for the young,
you can pay more tax then support us. Okay, support the next generation. But what about you? What is a good quality of life, Chris?
So I think if I had to distill it down to a concept, right, of what would be a good retirement is sense of independence. and we're talking about finances here. So that financial independence, freedom from worry about being dependent on somebody else, that I can rely on my financial position to pay for my needs, whatever those are, right? And of course, we can't say what is the need, what are the needs of every single Singaporean, but for any one of us, what is that level of that would assure me some independence to make the decisions that we want to make, right? To be able to make at whatever stage of our life, but particularly once we're no longer working. So I think that would sum it up for me, right? Having that space, that ability to freedom from worry about not having enough, not being able to make the decisions that I would like to make at that point in time. Because I don't have enough money.
So okay. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah.
I love the discussion. I think there's a lot more to discuss about retirement, housing, and all those things. And maybe we'll have another installation. So yes, thank you, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.